The Grumman F-14 Tomcat may be a legendary fighter that even got the Hollywood treatment in 1986's Top Gun, but for a short time in the 1970s, the Navy actually considered tossing the Tomcat in favor of flying the F-15 from its aircraft carriers instead. Let's take a dive into the F-15N Sea Eagle. I'm Alex Hollings, and this is Air Power.
Watch one.
These days, the F-14 conjures images of a bygone era, back when American air power was predicated on fielding the fastest, most powerful, and highest flying jets the nation's technological capability and economic might could muster. This devotion, if you will, to brute force and rapidly advancing technology produced incredible platforms that aimed to beat enemy defenses not with stealth like we do today, but by straight-up outflying them. Jets like the B-1B Lancer combined the speed and variable sweep-wing design of a fighter with the ability to carry an absolutely massive payload of 75,000 pounds into the fight. Others, like the F-16 Fighting Falcon, emphasized low cost for high performance, so it's no wonder that it became the most popular and common fighter platform on the planet. This push for performance was really mirrored by America's Cold War opponents in the Soviet Union. As each nation fielded a more powerful, more capable, or more advanced platform or weapon system, the other country would respond in kind by dumping money into programs aimed at offsetting any potential advantage the other country seemed to have. But even amid this era of large defense expenditures and the looming and existential threat of nuclear war, budget, as much as capability, still dictated a great deal of the makeup of America's arsenal. It was one of these debates over dollars and cents that really threatened to put the F-14 on the chopping block, and led to a proposal to field a different kind of F-15, one modified specifically for aircraft carrier duty. This new F-15N Sea Eagle aimed to be lighter, faster, more maneuverable, and cheaper than Tom Cruise's Tomcat. But not everything about the Sea Eagle was better, and ultimately it may have been armament that made the decision for the Navy. But in order to understand what prompted the Pentagon to think about putting the F-15 on aircraft carriers, we first need to understand the failings of the otherwise venerable F-14. The F-14 is really one of my favorite fighters in history. When I covered it for Popular Mechanics, you could argue that what I really did was write a 2,000-word love letter. But even I have to admit that it was incredibly expensive to maintain. And the Tomcat's problems extended well beyond the Navy's pocketbook. The F-14 came about in an era before ICBMs had matured into the go-to nuclear weapon delivery vehicle. And it was really meant to neuter the Soviet Union's most potent means of putting nukes on American soil at the time, which was their long-range bombers. To this end, Grumman had made the biggest and heaviest carrier fighter in history, with a lot of that weight dedicated to a suite of powerful new weapons and the systems required to leverage them. When fueled up and ready to go, the F-14 weighs in at 61,000 pounds, which is almost twice that of the future F-A-18, and quite a bit more than twice the weight of a fully fueled F-16 Fighting Falcon. But even with all that heft, the Tomcat still needed to be fast in order to accomplish its mission. So Grumman paired it with the powerful TF-30 engines that they had originally fitted to their F-111B that they had failed to sell the Navy on earlier. Each of these engines could produce 14,560 pounds of thrust under military power, with the afterburner kicking its output up to 25,100 pounds. So all told, the F-14 could leverage more than 50,000 pounds of thrust, which brought the aircraft up to an astonishing Mach 2.3. And its variable sweep-wing design still gave it really good handling at the low speeds required for carrier landings, though Tomcat pilots will tell you it was still a pretty tough job. Its mission may have been to intercept Soviet bombers from dozens of miles away, but its variable sweep-wing design also made it a very competent dogfighter. But even with all that capability, the Tomcat was still troublesome. Those TF-30 engines were powerful, but they were also too sensitive for the job. When operated at high angles of attack, or when the pilot adjusted the throttle position too quickly, which are both pretty common facets of the air combat this jet was designed for, those engines were prone to compressor stalls. What's worse is that these engines were mounted a vast 9 feet apart to allow for greater lift from the body and more weapons carriage space, but that meant that a stall in one engine could throw the aircraft into an unrecoverable flat spin. And there were other issues too, like failures of the turbine blades long before their anticipated service life had expired, which would cause catastrophic damage to the engine and could put pilots' lives at risk. Needless to say, all these mechanical issues only made the already expensive F-14 even more expensive. To the guys over at McDonnell Douglas, who were hard at work designing the forthcoming F-15, this seemed like an opportunity. Today, we know the F-15 as the most capable air superiority fighter of its generation. It's got a mind-boggling 104 air-to-air kills, and it's never been shot down by another fighter. At the time, however, it was barely more than a paper plane, with its first test flight not to come until halfway through the following year. But even then, when the F-15's performance was still notional, the figures were too impressive to ignore. We've talked before on this channel about how the F-15's development really got kicked into high gear in 1970, when the DoD first got wind of the Soviet Union's new MiG-25 Foxbat. Now, the MiG-25 was really scary to American defense officials at the time. I mean, they saw its huge engines and its large wing area and just assumed it was an incredibly capable air superiority fighter. Of course, we'd find out later that it wasn't, but that means the F-15 was designed to compete and win against this imaginary Soviet powerhouse, and the result was a very real powerhouse in the Eagle. And while it wasn't designed to serve aboard aircraft carriers, it was designed to dominate the skies of the Cold War. With the Navy set to begin purchases of Grumman's pricey F-14, McDonnell Douglas submitted a proposal for their F-15N Sea Eagle. And to be honest, it wasn't a bad shot. At a fueled weight of 44,500 pounds, the F-15 was 16,500 pounds lighter than the Tomcat with a similar load. That's the equivalent of an M198 howitzer with a fire team of Marines to run it. Because the F-15 had a relatively low weight-to-wing area ratio, it was more maneuverable than the F-14, and its less problematic Pratt & Whitney F-100 PW220 engines gave it a higher top speed, besting the Tomcat's Mach 2.3 by about 150 miles per hour, bringing it up to Mach 2.5. But better than faster or more maneuverable in the minds of some lawmakers was price. McDonnell Douglas was prepared to deliver F-15As to the Air Force at a sticker price of about $28 million per aircraft, which is about $189 million in 2021 money. High as that may seem, the larger and more complicated Tomcat rang in at $38 million per aircraft, or about $256 million today. That's right, this blows my mind too, but one F-14 cost about the same as 3 F-35As today. In order to get the F-15 spun up for carrier duty, McDonnell Douglas set about making some modifications. The F-15 already had a tailhook, which was meant for short airstrips or emergencies, but a carrier fighter needs to rely on its hook for every landing, so a larger reinforced hook was added to the design. To make for easier storage below deck on carriers, the wings would fold up at a 90-degree angle a bit more than 15 feet from each tip, about 15 feet 4 inches. The landing gear also needed to be swapped out for a more rugged set, and McDonnell Douglas said they'd set about designing them as soon as the Navy gave them the green light. With all these changes incorporated, the F-15 was only going to gain about 3,000 pounds, which combined with better maneuverability, a higher top speed, and a much lower price, all made this new Sea Eagle sound like a really good deal. But there was one glaring shortcoming. As good as the F-15N may have been, it couldn't carry America's latest and greatest air-to-air missile, the AIM-54 Phoenix. The Phoenix missile had been developed for the defunct F-111B effort, so McDonnell Douglas just migrated it to their Tomcat. The AN/AWG-9 radar, developed specifically for use with the Phoenix, was capable of tracking up to 6 targets at ranges as far as 100 miles. When coupled with a bevy of 13-foot-long Phoenix missiles, this radar made the F-14 an air-to-air opponent without any real equal in its era. This combination of Phoenix missiles and AN/AWG-9 radar was so potent that some even claimed that it offset the F-14's engine woes, saying that the fighter didn't need to be fast or maneuverable when it could just shoot its enemies down from so far away. Putting the F-15 on America's aircraft carriers might have been cheaper, and the aircraft itself may even have been better in some respects. But without Phoenix missiles, the Navy just wasn't interested. But McDonnell Douglas wasn't ready to quit yet, so they teamed up with Hughes Aircraft, the firm that had originally designed the Phoenix missile, and they all went back to the drawing board to devise a new version of their aircraft carrier F-15 that could wield the Phoenix just as well as the massive but mighty Tomcat. Of course, it couldn't be as easy as just slapping these missiles onto the existing hardpoints on the F-15. Not only were these weapons pretty large, but so was the radar needed to run them. The hefty Tomcat could carry a maximum of 6 Phoenix missiles, but famously couldn't land with all 6 still on board. If ever an F-14 scrambled to intercept Soviet bombers with 6 missiles and returned without firing them, the pilot would have to dump a few in the ocean in order to land safely. Fitting these weapons onto the F-15 was so much work, it actually warranted a new title, and the updated Sea Eagle was dubbed the F-15N PHX. But with all that added firepower, this new F-15N PHX weighed in at 10,000 pounds heavier than the F-15A, which really eliminated any performance advantage it ever did have over the Tomcat. A few years later, in 1973, a Senate subcommittee convened to decide what fighter the Navy would fly into the future. The F-14, the F-15N, a stripped-down version of the F-14, and a heavily upgraded version of the F-4 were all considered to some extent. Senator Thomas Eagleton, who was a Navy vet himself, even proposed a fly-off between the F-15N and the F-14, but it never manifested. In the end, as you probably know, the Navy ended up sticking with the Tomcat, at least for a few more years. And with that ends yet another edition of Air Power from Sandbox News. I'm Alex Hollings. Make sure you swing by sandboxnews.com today and every day for all the latest in news, entertainment, and motivation from all around the force. Make sure to click like and subscribe down below this video, leave me a comment to let me know what I should cover next, and don't forget to tap on that bell icon so you never miss a drop from Sandbox News.